Hello and welcome to Typical City, the home of the treble winners, champions of Europe. How does it feel, Blues? 2 days later, it's just not sunk in. It doesn't feel real. It's genuinely unfathomable to think we have come this far over such a short distance of time as well. It's incredible to think, but how have City won the treble? How have they done it? I think the opposition fans and most of the Premier League that want to throw things at us and are against us, which is the majority of the league, will say money. They bought it. They threw all the money in the world at it, which is absolute nonsense. There are so many factors that went into City's success that produced such high quality of football from top to bottom, the staff members, from the dinner ladies all the way to Pep Guardiola, every single one of them. Yes, it took money, but who isn't spending money in the Premier League right now? I mean, for example, the net spend, Chelsea are at the top over the last 5 years with 654 million net spend. United in second, 540 million. Arsenal third, 485 million. West Ham, 356 million they've spent. Newcastle, 351. Tottenham, 332 mil. Wolves, 276 million. Aston Villa, 200. Some of these clubs that you just don't even think about in terms of you associate them with money. You think money in football, you think City and PSG and Chelsea and United, don't you? But Villa, Wolves, Liverpool, all ahead of us and sitting in 10th, 224 million net spend over the last 5 years. That is incredible. It really is incredible, and yet they still continue to throw the money claim at us. And then it's like, all right, okay, well, fine, everyone else is spending money. If they're spending money, then let's throw the Premier League charges at them as well, because that is going to get dealt with. I guarantee you the court cases, and if anything, thank you. Thank you so much, because if you want to talk about how we won the Premier League and how we won the FA Cup and how we galvanised to win the treble, it's ever since that day, you unified the club of Manchester City Football Club. You unified us and created Pep Guardiola to do a historic interview where he stared right down the barrel of a camera lens and pointed out all those people that have wronged City, and that we are now going to do our talking on the pitch until we're able to do our talking off the pitch. And that's exactly what they've done. They galvanised the club. We went on a ridiculous undefeated streak since that interview, and Pep Guardiola it just worked. Thank you so much, because the Premier League knew what they were doing. They were trying to harm us. It was like, Arsenal have got a chance here. Arsenal genuinely can. And the red clubs, the Liverpools, Uniteds and Arsenals, they're all in it together. They were all involved. They're heavily involved. And it's no coincidence that the white paper movement, that for those that don't know, is government organised to take the Premier League away from being self-regulated and become independently regulated instead. Which, how is that not a good thing? Because the Premier League are consistently making mistakes. They've made mistakes with the charges. They had to change about half of them. And now we're talking about a white paper movement on the same day where they voted against it and they delayed it. On the exact same day that white paper movement got delayed, because the Premier League don't want to be independently regulated. They want to be self-regulated so they can hand out the rules and make the rules and move the goalposts to suit them. That's exactly what they want. And from that situation, City have been accused, and that took all the limelight away from the Premier League. On the same day, they were at City have been accused of cheating. Let's all focus on City. And that's what the world did. All the focus would have been on the Premier League. Oh, why don't they want to be independently regulated? I wonder why. So they can keep making the rules and keep the cartel as the cartel. From that day onwards, they said, right, let's all just make it about City. And that's what they've done. The media have just become obsessed with 115 charges and this number that where is anyone's proof? I haven't seen a single person provide proof that City have genuinely broken the rules. I want to see proof. Having someone say that they've done it doesn't mean we've done it at all. Where is the proof? I haven't seen anyone actually say that here's a one document. Get me one document that is genuine proof. And if you want to talk about the documents from the UEFA case, they've already been proved. Because in the UEFA case, we went to court with them, all because of emails. Who can't doctor an email? Some of the documents that were provided as evidence in that UEFA case were a joke. A 10-year-old could open a Word document and make the exact same thing. So that's absolute bollocks. So in terms of the money, No, because we're what, halfway in the Premier League. We're the 10th in the Premier League for the last 5 years net spend. In terms of inflation going beyond that, there's an infinite amount of players that are ahead of us. Alan Shearer, he's miles ahead on the inflation. You've got Juan Sebastian Veron, his value today would be 155 million in comparison to what United spent on him in 2001. Stan Collymore for Nottingham Forest, 133 million. Going all the way down, you've got Rio Ferdinand ahead of him, Paul Pogba, Wayne Rooney, Dwight York, Dennis Bergkamp, Fernando Torres. Have you noticed how I'm saying United, Liverpool and Arsenal players quite consistently here? And they're the ones who are organising this whole 115 Premier League charges because there's a new cat sitting at the table. There's a new pig stuffing their face from the trough that they've been consistently stuffing their face from for decades, and they don't like it. And we've gone and won a treble, boys. So they are hurting right now. They are stinging as bad as it can get. But just to quash all that nonsense that these people are coming out with to say that, well, they bought it, absolute bollocks. Because, Fernando Torres, Shevchenko going to Chelsea, Andy Cole, Ruud van Nistelrooy, Ravanelli, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Chris Sutton, and after all of those names that I've just mentioned, Jack Grealish at the current value of £100 million. And it's ridiculous to even accuse us of such nonsense. This money doesn't have anything to do with it. It plays a small part, just as much as it plays a small part in their failures. Because if you want to talk about Chelsea spending as well, Chelsea spent more on Kai Havertz than City spent on Haaland. They spent more on Cucurella than City did on Diaz. They spent more on Koulibaly than City did on Stones. They spent more on Kepa than City did on Edison. They spent more on Sterling than we did on Alvarez. They spent more on Ziyech than we did on Bernardo Silva. So it's hard to argue that money is the only reason why City have won the league. And money plays a part. There's no two ways about it, because you need to buy infrastructure. You need to buy training grounds and facilities for these players. And obviously the players cost money. We have spent money. There is no denying that. But it's not like we are leagues ahead of everybody in terms of spending, because we're below most teams in the Premier League. It's astonishing. But the number one reason why City have won the treble, if you want the actual answer, there's one man, and it's Pep Guardiola. It's astonishing to see what he's done with this club. He's taken them to places and he's caused us to now. We're now dreaming about things people wouldn't even dare to dream about quadruples now, because it's like, next year, what do we do? Where do we go from here? It's unthinkable to think that we're now in a position where the treble isn't the end of all. For me, if I was a pragmatic betting man, I wouldn't say that we're going to go and win the treble next year. It's hard to imagine, because it's human instinct to hit the heights that we've hit. And there's going to be a few players in that club. I think Pep Guardiola is obviously one of them. Haaland, he seems like a machine who wants to be the best of the best. Kevin De Bruyne is of this world. There are a few players in every squad in the world that their ambition has a ceiling on it. And you hit a treble and it's like, well, where do I go from here? I've completed it, mate. You're like, where do you go from a treble? And that is the hardest task in football, is to go again. Next season, can we go again? It's easy to say it. It's something completely different to actually go out there and do it. We talk about Klopp and his mentality monsters. And I mean, nonsense, because they've still got those same players that were being labelled as mentality monsters. So why are they not doing it now? Because they're not mentality monsters. These City players are mentality monsters, and the Pep Guardiola and his coaching staff around him, they're the mentality monsters that have continuously pushed this team after doing 2 Premier League title winning seasons prior to this, and we've won a domestic quadruple, don't forget. We won the FA Cup, the League Cup, the Premier League and the Community Shield all in one season, and no one's talking about that. No one in English history had done that before us, and now no one in English history has also won that and the treble, as United wants to, because they wanted to squash the idea that that wasn't the real treble. Well, now we've done that and that. Nobody has done that, which makes Pep Guardiola the best, because the best in the world. There's no manager in the world that has gone to Spain and won a treble, and then come to England and won the treble. The 2 biggest trebles in domestic football you can possibly win, because I think most would agree the Premier League and the Liga are the 2 biggest leagues in domestic football in the world, and Pep Guardiola has gone to both of those teams leagues and won the treble that you can win. And then you get all the people who are continuously going to say, oh, well, yeah, go and do it with Stoke, mate. Go and get a Champions League for Burnley. Yeah, because that makes sense. That's like asking Picasso to draw a colouring book with Crayola crayons and say, oh, that's as good as it gets, mate, because you're colouring in the lines. It's basic stuff. Why would you ask a Picasso? You give him the best brushes. You give him the best paints in the world, and he will create a masterpiece because he is a master tactician. He is a master at his trade. And Pep Guardiola, you don't give him Stoke. Why would you do that? What is that proving? It's proving nothing. If you give Pep Guardiola a Stoke, he would do as well as probably the rest of them down there, because you're limited with what you've got. Yes, but there are so many managers in the world and so many other artists in the world that you could give all these paintbrushes to. You could give them the best paints in the world, but they won't create a masterpiece. They won't. Mancini, Pellegrini, they were incredible managers, but they've not done what they had. Exactly the same arsenal and funds and backing from a club that Pep Guardiola had. They had exactly the same. We've seen numerous managers going into Chelsea. Jose Mourinho, Van Gaal and Ten Hag. They've got the same backing that Pep Guardiola has. In terms of financial expenditure, they've got the same, but they're not doing it. And why is that? Because Pep Guardiola is the best football coach in the world. And it's not even debatable anymore. I don't understand how it can even be brought into question. And what other name can you argue with him? Sir Alex Ferguson, for me, is the only one. And when you start talking about the debate of the 99 and who's the best treble winner out of the two, I mean, it is. People say, oh, it's hard to compare because they're different eras. No, that's why it's easy to compare, because they're different eras. Because this is an infinitely harder era to win football matches in. Because from the top position in the Premier League to the bottom position in the Premier League, you've got immense quality. Whereas the gulf between the top and the bottom in the Premier League was monstrous in 1999, because most of the players were smoking and eating pies at half-time, and there was a very small category of player that considered this to be elite sports and athletes that took care of their bodies, and they were the winners. And the money difference as well between top to bottom. Now you've got Brentford and Everton who can spend 30-40 million on a player. No one was spending that amount of money back then. And like even if you take inflation into consideration, the difference is so much smaller in what these clubs can do. And every single week you have to be at your best in the Premier League this week. Whereas you see the winning margins between United's 99 treble team versus City's 99 treble team. They're not even close. They're not even close. We have to play at our absolute best to win every single Premier League game, whereas United didn't. They could afford to lose games, and they talk about who they went up against, and the Arsenal team back then was better than the Arsenal team of today. Yeah, but what about the rest of them? What about the rest of them? The only way we can hope that next season we can continue to do this is because the other teams are so good and we're just that extra in a league of our own almost, that you hope the other teams eat each other and destroy each other, giving us the red carpet to walk out and go and lift another treble. That's what you're kind of hoping for. But it's just... It's not true. The comparisons, they can be compared. People say, oh, it's different eras. It's not. It's not. It is different eras, but it's not incomparable. Absolutely not. We've made draws defeats. Back then, a draw wasn't a bad result. You know, if you draw to Arsenal or draw to anyone in the top half of the league, it's like, oh, well, okay, take a point. Now, we get so many points over the course of a season that if you draw, it'll feel like a loss. And we talk about the invincibles and the quality of that invincible team. Whereas if you go and draw now, which, oh yeah, you're invincible, you didn't lose, well done. But if you draw now, you have lost. You've lost because you haven't got 3 points. City have. We've got 3 points. And that's what we do. We just continuously win. This juggernaut just keeps moving forward. And there's something that no one else has spoken about this season. This was done. We talk about Liverpool winning it in a COVID season. We won it in a World Cup season. A season where the whole season, the Premier League season, just came to a stop and had a half-time break where we all went away and did a World Cup, where the first half of the season, I think a lot of the players, Ruben Diaz in particular, were thinking about the World Cup, looking after their bodies, preventing injuries, and going into these games a little bit tentatively thinking, right, I don't want to get injured because the World Cup means the world to me. I want to get there. I want to be fit. I want to be raring to go. But the difference between Ruben Diaz pre-World Cup and post-World Cup playing for City, Jesus Christ, what a difference. I mean, the guy's been impeccable since the World Cup, and he's come back, and his performance in that Champions League final It's incredible. It's incredible. So if we focus on the the Premier League and just like going up against Arsenal, I think they bottled it. That's my answer. If how City won the treble, let's go over the three competitions, shall we? Because in the Premier League, we won it by just continuously winning and adding pressure to them. We didn't have to keep winning at the end of the season. We had games like Brentford and Brighton away. We lost to Brentford at the end of the season. I was fearful we were going to do that anyway. Whether we would is hypothetical because we would have played a completely different team because we'd already won the league. But we'd already won the league because Arsenal went to Forest and lost. That's not us. We didn't win that game or lose that game for Arsenal. They lost it for themselves. So if that's not bottling it, by definition, that is bottling it. You just threw it away yourselves. You literally gave us the title. So having said that, without our pressure, and they knew that City just keep winning, so therefore they have to keep winning, and they couldn't handle the pressure, and that's why they bottled it. But they wouldn't have bottled it without the pressure, if you know what I mean. So we almost did cause, it was a chain of events that has happened, and it all starts with the fear factor of City. And that's where it starts with, and City pushing Arsenal all the way every game and playing first, doesn't matter. You play first, okay, next game, we'll win. If we play first, we've won. Over to you, Arsenal. You've got to win. And eventually, it told its time, and eventually they just collapsed, didn't they? FA Cup. Arsenal was our first game in the FA Cup. Chelsea was in the FA Cup. So it's not like we had an easy run in. We had Bristol City away, which is not an easy place to go. And Sheffield United, who are doing well, doing really well, we went away to them at Wembley and we did destroy them, to be fair. And then obviously United in the FA Cup final. So you've beaten Arsenal, Chelsea and Manchester United to win the FA Cup, and against United, the team that wanted that treble so badly. It doesn't get sweeter than that. And that was stage 2 of 3 complete. And then the Champions League. Wow. I mean, Bayern Munich, we tonked them 3-0 at our place, and that first half performance against Real Madrid is football out of this planet, out of this world. Like there's no way I can imagine a team playing to that standard for years to come. I couldn't believe how good that first half performance was against Real Madrid, and we've not played that good since that performance in the league, at following games, and even in the Champions League final. We were nowhere near at it, but we beat Bayern Munich and we beat Real Madrid. So there's no arguments to say, well, you had an easy run-in, because we've beaten the best teams in all the competitions to get there. It's just that there is nothing for the opposition, for the fans to say. There is nothing that people who want to diminish this treble, there's nothing they can say. And then the Champions League final, and you want to talk about how we won it. You need that bit of luck. You need those things, the drop of the ball to go your way. The Ederson saves, for example. I thought Rodri was having a mare of a game, more because of this horrible Inter Milan, typical Italian performance with Bastoni and Kalanoglu playing in the middle, and Brozovic, playing in the middle. The shape that they had across that midfield and pressing Rodri, he couldn't deal with it. Rodri was getting pressed non-stop. He was having a really tough game, not because he was playing poorly, it's because of the pressure that they were applying onto Rodri in particular. They targeted him, and the man they targeted ended up scoring the most historic goal in City's history. And I mean, it's incredible to think about, like, that he was the one man that they wanted, and he had all the space in the world on the edge of the area, and he just drifts in, smashes it in the bottom corner. City fans go wild. Unbelievable. But the Ederson saves, him too. He was having a ropey game, and I think nerves were playing a part in that first half in particular. Ederson was just booting it out for throw-ins at times, but then he stepped up when it mattered. And that's all that we needed at that time. And that save, that was reminiscent of that Drogba equaliser against Bayern Munich in the Champions League final some 6, 7, maybe 10 years ago now, where he headed it. And the Chelsea were getting battered all game. Didn't have a chance all game. Then Lukaku with that header, the last second of the game, and Ederson pulls a save out the bag. There was a save before that from Lukaku where he should be saving it. To be fair, it was smashed straight at him, but then it dropped to, I can't remember who it drops to. Might have been Brozovic again, who heads it back towards them. Lukaku blocks it, but then it comes off Diaz. And how did Ruben Diaz not put that into his own goal? How did he head that? The neck muscles and the reflexes that he used to just knock that past the post and stop that from going in. That's quality and luck merged together, and it was an amalgamation of everything we've deserved, all the piss taking and all the money accusations, all the Premier League charges, all the bollocks that's been thrown at City over the years, namely from that rag lot across the road that have given us stick for years and decades. It's all come back to bite them in such a satisfying and fulfilling way. It's just too good to be true. It's almost too good to be true. And I mean, it was almost thinking, is Kevin De Bruyne's injury an omen? No. Everything that looks like typical City, like all the things weren't going our way in that first half, it's like, oh no, we're not having one of those days. All the little details weren't going right for us, but the one detail that mattered was Rodri scoring, Ederson saving, game over, treble won, job is done. But where do we go from here, boys? Where do we go, Blues? Because, I mean, quadruple, do you really think we're going to go back and hit the heights that we've hit next season? Because if they do, it requires a large change, because we've got, I think Gundogan's probably leaving, Bernardo Silva's probably leaving, so money needs to happen. We've got plenty of money to spend, not just from our own bank account and our own ownership model, but from the winnings. We've won nearly £300 million worth of winnings this season, so we have got a transfer kitty that's going to blow people out of the water next season. So who we bring in, who goes out, that's going to be a video for another day. But let me know your thoughts. How do you think we've won the treble? Get in the comments below, like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Typical City, and I will see you in the next one.